Carter, the New York Times best-selling author of The Russia Hoax, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary and Frame Donald, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, and Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. All right, good evening, everyone. Now, Sarah, you have unearthed some additional information. Why don't you tell us what that is?
Well, I think it's very telling what Bruce Ohr and his relationship with Christopher Steele and how concerned Christopher Steele was that they would be exposed. There was also another text message, Judge Jeanine, that I was able to publish last week, and it was about the firewalls. And Christopher Steele basically asks Bruce Ohr, will our firewalls that we have in place hold? Will these firewalls hold? And this is also very telling and something that is very concerning to Congress, because apparently it seems that they premeditated and worked around, used Bruce Ohr as a back channel to deliver Steele's messages straight over to the FBI, even though he had been fired. But they put up firewalls, and what Congress wants to know is who were these and what were these firewalls? And that's what they'll be asking him on August 28th when they bring him in for deposition.
All right, and Matt Gaetz, I mean, you've certainly had your share of inquiries of these individuals. When he does come before, I believe, 2 committees at the end of August, I mean, what do you expect to hear? Now we're hearing things that he didn't talk about in the past.
We know that Bruce and Nellie Ohr are the Bonnie and Clyde of collusion. Think about what we just learned. A foreign spy is upset that he's not able to use our own Justice Department enough to poison and influence Robert Mueller's investigation. This is after Fusion GPS hired the spouse of Bruce Ohr to be able to have their influence. Look, you have the spouse of a senior Justice Department official colluding with an agent of a foreign government, Christopher Steele, with the express purpose of trying to destabilize a U.S. presidential election. Why is this not what we're looking into? Why is Robert Mueller not looking into this foreign interference and not the hoax of the Trump-Russia investigation that, by the way, Greg Jarrett points out beautifully in his new book?
Oh, that's such a nice plug. Sarah, let me ask you something. When the congressman talked about the fact that Nellie was hired by Fusion, Nellie Ohr, do we know when she was hired by Fusion GPS?
Yeah, she was hired by Fusion GPS in 2016.
Oh, and this is right before the election.
That's right, with a very specific purpose, Judge Jeanine, to actually investigate the Trump-Russia issue, the dossier. Remember, she's fluent in Russian. She's also a Russia expert. This was very well coordinated, and I agree with Matt Gaetz 100%. Congressman Gaetz is right. This was an effort to bring Russian disinformation in this dossier into our election and to affect the election.
Right. And Greg Jarrett, I mean, you know, Bruce Ohr, it looks to me, is in legal jeopardy. What could he be charged with?
I mean, these are the documents, 63 pages. I've looked through them over the last 10 days that I've had them, and it's clear to me that he is in legal jeopardy. It's astonishing that he's still employed, and here's why. Bruce and Nellie Ohr's bank account is getting fatter and fatter because of the dossier that they are both peddling. He doesn't disclose it under federal regulations. He's required to do so. So that is potentially a crime, filing a false report.
Right.
But beyond that, using your federal office for personal financial gain is federal gratuity statute violation, bribery statute violation, honest services violation.
But these guys know this in the Department of Justice. Why is the guy still working?
Because the Department of Justice is run by a feckless attorney general named Jeff Sessions, and Rod Rosenstein, the deputy attorney general, who is obstructing Congress, I believe, to cover up his own participation and wrongdoing. He filed and signed the renewal application for the wiretap on the Trump campaign without the required evidence.
Right. And you know,
and Judge,
go ahead,
Judge, I wanted to make a point about what Greg just said. Rod Rosenstein won't tell us when he first learned that Nellie Ohr was working for Fusion GPS. So I want to know from Bruce Ohr, when did he tell his colleagues at the Department of Justice that in violation of the law that required him to disclose his wife's occupation and her sources of income. He did not do that. And so when did all the other people at the Department of Justice find this out? Because Rod Rosenstein, I've asked him twice in open hearing, and he will not give an answer. I think there's a real smoking gun there.
Yeah, I think there's more than this smoking gun there. But let's go back, Sarah Carter, to the whole idea of Nellie Orr getting the job right before the election, and then, as Greg says, you know, pocketing all of this cash in their bank account. And Orr is facilitating trying to get Christopher Steele, who's been cut loose, on the Mueller team now. Why are they so invested in this that they know that they can be charged with crimes, lose their job? What is it that they're so caught up on?
They're caught up on removing President Trump. They're caught up on pushing this disinformation, these lies into the American public and into the media, and trying to get these lies to stick. And what they didn't expect was for all of this to come out and be revealed, Judge Jeanine. And now we look at Rod Rosenstein, and let me just say one thing about this. He signed that fourth FISA application. He would have known all of this information, because remember, there were 4 renewals. So he should have known what was in there. And if he didn't, then there's something wrong with him, because this is one of the biggest cases in the country.
Well, I want to talk about the Manafort trial today, guys. We're now in the second day, and Greg, I'm going to start with you, of deliberations. And the jury has been let go for the evening. When I was a judge, I very often would keep juries. Once they got a case, I would keep them in, especially in a case like this, where there is so much public interest. But what do you think? It seems that the defense attorney is very heartened by some of the questions about reasonable doubt.
That's right. They sent out a question yesterday to the judge. What's the definition of reasonable doubt? As you know, as a former judge and a DA, there is no legal standard definition for reasonable doubt, because we leave it to the discretion and determination of the jurors themselves. It's a very, very high burden. And the reason the defense is pleased about that is because they mounted a reasonable doubt defense. They didn't call a case in earnest, but they did it through cross-examination.
What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think that they have tried to zero in on 1 or 2 jurors to either hang the jury or convince the jury unanimously there is reasonable doubt you cannot convict.
You know, Congressman, what do you think is going to happen in this case?
Well, I think it's going to be overblown, because nothing in this case has anything to do with Donald Trump, the Trump campaign, or any involvement in the 2016 campaign with Russia.
Will he be convicted?
I don't know. I guess I just don't really care if Paul Manafort pays taxes in the 80s or 90s, like, you know, to the same extent that CNN seems to follow it every single second. I just don't think that it has any relevance, and it's distracting the country.
It should have been an IRS audit and a civil penalty plus interest, and, you know.
This is what the feds do, Greg. It's what they do. Sarah, you got 10 seconds.
Okay, but we see what happened today with Judge Ellis coming out and saying that he has been threatened, that he has to have, you know, the security of marshals, and now there's a lot of concern about these jurors. This is what happens, Judge Jeanine, when we have such a divisive country right now, and so much rhetoric from the other side.
That's why I'm surprised that he has let them out, so that there's a possibility of tampering. This is a very, very hot climate, guys. Anyway, thank you all for being here tonight. Appreciate your input. And coming up, Senator Lindsey Graham is raising concerns with the head of the FBI.